I'm Phil Ambrose. I'm from one of the local departments around here. As the slide says, I'm a fire captain, hazmat specialist, and paramedic. I'm just a regular guy that got into the fire service. And I'm going to talk about a significant incident that I was able to research that I think is important, especially because this is called Fire Talk, not Hazmat Talk. So I do Hazmat Talks, I could say around the world because we do it on the interweb, but those are to other hazmat geeks, so I think they like it. But now I'm talking to fire folks. But I'm a fire folk also. But I'm a dad. I'm like everybody else in this room. Have 6 other things we're doing, right? So I work in one of the agencies nearby here. Love City of Pasadena. Great to work with. They probably have the best fires in the region. So happy to come over for that. And we're also the regional response team with one of the other neighboring agencies that does hazmat for the City of Pasadena. I'm going to throw it out there. It's kind of a shameless plug, but I started this company called HazSim, which I'm not going to talk about other than right now in the segue and how everything developed. What it is a hazmat meter simulator. I saw a need to help my peers learn better. And so we were going around faking hazmat, meaning pretending. And so my hazmat meter looks, sounds, feels, tastes, smells like a real hazmat detector, but it's not. Why is that important to today? Is now I have HazSims across the country. So I went from a insular California firefighter knowing only what I knew in the LA region to now I've been traveling the country, which has been such a cool thing to go to The Rock, to go to Massachusetts Fire Academy, to go all these places from volunteer organizations to career, and then hear what people do and how they do it, because we don't all do it the same. Right, Pasadena? All right, the other thing I started because I had so much free time was Hazmat Nation, which was just my news outlet to gather hazmat people together. It's not there's such a thing as Firefighter Nation by Penwell, but Hazmat Nation, which was to try to coordinate all hazmat news information. What did that do for me? Now I get texts from firefighters across the country sending me pictures. Hey, this is an incident we had the other day. And that, to me, is one of the coolest things in this career so far. A few of us were talking offline earlier. You're going to FDIC. People in this room know about FDIC. A lot of people here in the region may not even know what they're missing, the greatest show on earth in Indianapolis. So that's a little bit about me. What I'm going to talk about is the gray area, and the gray area is anybody in here that's not hazmat. We talk about hazmat first responder operations, which says we teach you the minimum, how to identify it, how to call the people that know, right, that are supposed to be me, or how to maybe shut off a leak remotely. So gray to me, I don't even know how to spell it. So the gray area is already a gray area as it is gray. And then I think there's a movie about 50 Shades of it. I never saw it. I was too tied up. So the initial dispatch. So when we're talking about fire, this is just a hazmat guy. No. Initial dispatch, odor complaint, check the welfare, difficulty breathing, unknown medical, one of my favorites, miscellaneous medical, person down. It's person down, intersection of. None of those dispatches say hazmat, hazardous materials, nothing at all. But those are what anybody in this room that's riding an engine or truck company, I happen to ride an engine company, that's what we'll get dispatched to. And then the gray area is going to be that decision. And no, I don't have a new acronym or a new way of doing things. I'm really not that smart. In fact, I can't even remember acronyms other than the alphabet and how to spell Mississippi. So fire, when we get to see it, obvious, right? Pulled all these fancy file photos of my own. You're going down the hallway, you see fire. You know what you're getting into in a way, or you know what to expect. Although, as our friends for the Firefighter Cancer Support Network point out, and I agree with, that's a hazmat scene, right? That is a hazmat scene. Shameless plug for another thing I do, the Hazmat Guys Nation, but that's a hazmat, right? You see a mushroom cloud, you see some crazy stuff, maybe not over coronas, but okay, that's obvious, that's a hazmat scene. Nobody's gonna argue that, but that's not what we're talking about. We're in the gray area. The Hazmat Guys Nation is a thing we started with hazmat personnel around the country. So now every Tuesday night we sit on a radio show with FDNY hazmat members, Orlando, California, volunteer agencies. I've never seen, the fire service is so neat. There's bad information, right? You can Google bad information, but now you can connect, just like I mentioned how I get texts with pictures of incidents from all over the country. You can never connect better, so time to engage. All right, car fire. Obvious, right? It's a car fire. You're rolling up on that. We intentionally said it. We're studying how you can set off for some arson stuff, but it's a car fire. Inside that car, not a very good environment, kind of like a HazMat, but you roll up on it, it's a car fire. It's not a miscellaneous medical. Same thing, looks like a car on fire. Now this actually came from a San Diego study a friend of mine, Todd Burton, did, which you wouldn't have all the visqueen, but this is a chemical suicide inside of a car, which the car could, less smoke than that, could present as darked out windows with the person inside, but the person had the intent of mixing chemicals to kill themselves. Now you're rolling on a person slumped over the wheel call, right? 3 in the morning, bars closed, different call. You know, chalk the wheels, call PD, take a look, see if the engine's on. Parking lot somewhere behind the grocery store, different kind of call. Same type of danger, though, than what we're familiar with. Okay. Let me get to my point. So we talked about first in consideration. So now, okay, we're sitting in the seat. As I like to say, we're rolling in engine or truck company or RA or BLS. We talked about the first responder operation says, well, there is some rescue considerations, but there is a bit of a gray area depending on where you go and get your training, which is why I don't like the word expert. I'm not one. Then there was, if anybody had heard of the rule of thumb, which was, you know, if it's a HazMat, put your thumb over it. If it disappears, you're far enough away. Great. But wasn't it Chief Eversole that said, nobody calls 911 expecting to, as he put it, dumb A firefighters showing up in a pickup truck, right? They don't care. They want you to solve their problem. So we're going to go over rescue response in that gray area. So I had the pleasure, through everything else I came up to, was something that's been popular to talk about as chemical suicide. In fact, if you're a Google writer, they say the first chemical suicide was here in Pasadena in, I think, 08 or 06. It's actually wrong. There was several before then. But if you want to just do Google facts, that's where it comes in from. And it was actually members I'm privileged to work with now that were actually on that call. But somebody that decided to kill themselves creating this chemical reaction. So the case study I'm going to go over is a real incident. I was not on it. Actually, it happened in the middle of America. But what I did get to do is interview several people that were there, including the victim that is now alive, to talk about it. I deleted information to protect the innocent. This is an actual picture from the scene. 4:16 a.m., sheriff deputies were dispatched to the resident's address, reference a possible suicide. And I'll tell you how it came in. Officer G arrived first on scene. A few minutes later, he stated over the radio, the victim appeared to have drank some kind of chemical and is not conscious but is breathing. And I'll get into a little more of the details. From the sheriff's report, now let's go back. This is a more rural area, which really doesn't matter other than when you think about response times. It's a volunteer fire department, which means maybe they're at the station, maybe they're there, maybe they're not, maybe they have their gear. And unlike where the property we're standing on right now, which is fire-based EMS, it's separate EMS. In fact, even their HazMat team is run through EMS. In fact, very well run, but not everything's the same as where you live. That one takeaway, it's not always the same as what you think. As I entered the residence, I immediately had to turn around and leave. The chemical odor was too strong to even stay in the house, if you can see that in the back. So that's what the deputy's reporting. And so picture now a single wide trailer home, and that's what they're at the door of. And now you have the check the welfare law enforcement officer that rolls with any of us saying, whoa, this is no good. And he can see something going on inside. So let's back up to with the victim. When I talked to this young man who's doing very well now, and I'm glad to hear, what he did is he told me he Googled a peaceful way to die, and everything came up. Because as a paramedic for a long time, the first thing I wondered is, was this a legit, was he really trying? Was it like the unfortunate circumstances we have at your bridge down the street here, where they meant it, they did it, it's game over? Or was this more of a cry for help? This was several months in the making. So you can Google it and you can find out what to use. And this is what you're gonna see on a scene. Because what I see anybody here rolling on, you might go on that despondent EMS call and then you start to notice some things that might be clues. Yes, if you saw a rope tied in the shape of a noose in a back room, it would be a clue. If you saw a handgun and a note, it would be a clue on the attempt. If you saw something like this, so he had Googled the lime sulfur. He actually had to get off the internet. It took some time. And the Lysol was at the local Walmart. What you do when you mix these two chemicals together, and Google will tell you all how to do it, is you release hydrogen sulfide gas, which is the one that smells like rotten eggs and also is very lethal. And his whole point was it was guaranteed to do the job quickly, efficiently, and peacefully, as it said in the Google search. So what I'm going to go through the sequence of events. He taped off the bathroom area because even the website gave good detail on how much area do I need to accomplish this task. A vehicle actually, obviously works pretty well, sealed up nicely, unless you're driving a convertible with the top down, or a VW. Not maybe the new ones, but I grew up with the old VW. And let's see, he taped off the bathroom and he set up that warning tape. Another question I had for him, and I didn't bring a bunch of notes here, was, did you intend to hurt anybody else? Because it got out, there has been those where incidents where, like the car I showed you, if a first responder pulled up and said, "Hey, how you doing?" and got a face full of that, they're getting hurt. Did they intend to do that? Most of us tend to do a little stutter step because when you approach somebody slumped over the wheel in the car, I don't want to get vomited on either if it is that 3:01 a.m. call when the bars close. So he had the bucket all set up. This is after the fact in the HazMat investigation. He prepared the chemicals, but he told me he was very careful. He didn't want to mix them early. And he had it all set up, and he even moved one of the products into another container so he can just kind of tip it, because he was sure it was going down. And then if you see the last words and warning, and this was another question I had, he posted on his Facebook status kind of what he was doing, which, as most of us in the room, if you're medics or been on some calls, you're going, well, that's maybe telling everybody what you're doing so you get saved. He planned this to do it at 3 in the morning because he figured nobody was going to be online at 3 in the morning. And as he told me in his words, I want to make sure they had the story straight. I'm checking out. I don't need anybody else to make up a story of why I did this. I want my story straight. Well, luckily for him, and I'm kind of paraphrasing because I'm not positive, but it sounds like Grandma was an insomniac or up checking her wall. Grandma saw what was going on with this post, woke up the aunt and said, something's going on. That's when we would be activated, right? Even right here in Pasadena, tones go off, miscellaneous medical, check on the welfare. None of the potential chem suicide was anything in any initial dispatch. These were the liner notes with stuff removed from I had the sheriff's deputies' reports and everything. Heavy gas smell. This is radio traffic. Not sure what he has ingested. So they're looking in. They got overcome by these fumes, and they're looking downrange. And what happened is when he's going through this process of dying, remember the old seizure, coma, death? Throw in some vomit in there. He's vomiting, he's retching, he's dying. And so now the scene is presenting as puddle of vomit around him, but this signage. So the cop opened both doors of the trailer, which is huge, first in people. A ventilation happened by accident because introducing fresh air into that trailer actually probably assisted in saving his life then. And then the one I made big, EMS refusing to go inside. I'm a captain on an engine not too far from here. Don't blame them at all. Would not expect that. If there's the other thing, which I'll talk about later, which I can never spell, so I always do the element, PB, lead. I don't mess around with lead. Any projectile, whether it be guns or cars running me over, that's not something I'm going in until it's safe, right? EMS refusing to go inside. In conclusion, back to the gray area. So I'm talking about this kid and I'll tell you what happened in the result and why he's living to talk about it. The gray area, discuss the incidents, develop an A, B, and C. As a company officer, I'm walking in on miscellaneous medicals, and I'm the guy looking at windows to see if there's a shooter in the window. I wasn't a Navy SEAL like the previous speaker, but that's my job, to take everything like somebody's going to jump out and the boogeyman's going to get us, right? Because I understand that the medics and the rest of the fire personnel, they're doing that, but they're also thinking about the call. Discuss in advance your risk-gain parameters. Hey, what if we had something like that? Because here's what I'm trying to avoid in the gray area is if you backed off and did the rule of thumb on this particular case, which I'll give you the final outcome, probably would have been dead. But I wouldn't have blamed anybody at that initial front door of going, whoa, this seems too dangerous, call HazMat. Well, HazMat could be a long way out. Even right here in Pasadena, it's going to take us, depending on traffic, it's going to take us a while. So what did happen in this case, the planets aligned and the ant, let's throw this one into the mix that I discovered. She went in, said, forget it, I'm going in. This is family. I talked to him in detail about the death process because he did say, said when he did it, immediately rotten egg smell and he could see it. He said it was hard to breathe, so he laid down. He said, I'm just going to take slow, deep breaths. I'm going to let this happen. He said he was out, and then he remembers waking up with severe like muscle pain, like he'd been working out, and that was the convulsions he'd been seizing, and it kind of came out of it. I don't have all the chemistry data on this, but I would say maybe the toxicity levels were just maybe off. But he remembers kind of coming out and then retching, vomiting. And I asked him, at that point, did you want to? No, I thought this was it. This was, I mean, blame Google. It wasn't a very peaceful way to die. It was actually horrible. Then he does remember the sounds, people coming in. Here's what worked out in his favor. A couple of volunteer firefighters happened to be either at the hall or nearby. They heard the whole thing came out. This did make the news. It was back in December of last year. They threw on SCBA, went in and pulled him out. So back when I said EMS staging, nobody ever waited for HazMat. They went in. Those two individuals are fine. The victim survived. He's fine. There was some decon that took place. Why? Hydrogen sulfide kind of goes up and away, out of ways, but you've got the vomit, you have everything else. You do some sort of decon because somebody at the ER is going to say, did it happen? And if it didn't, then you have to. And the ant, I mentioned the ant. She went in, she actually was never medically treated or cared for. There was some theory as to maybe, longtime smoker, maybe she just had better lungs to handle what was going on. There was people on scene that did say, yes, this was overwhelming, but my theory is also that process of ventilation that I talked about. There was the right then, just like that car that was on fire. Eventually that car, even if we didn't put it out right, it's just gonna be a skeleton of a car, no more smoke, give it tomorrow. Just like the incident that happened, that reaction happened, it was a bad gas, it was a lethal gas, it would have killed the kid, now it's no more. So the two areas in the gray area, the SCBA was just fine to protect these firefighters. Now, this is in the fire service, right? It's now hit it hard from the yard or go in. That's our taste great, less filling argument. I like both. I can adapt. We work for both pretty aggressive departments, but I think I'm smart enough to kind of take them all in. Same thing with things like this. You can be a rule of thumber, and if that is your comfort zone, stay there. But think about the things that you could come across, whether it be in this case, it's chem suicide. Tomorrow at a training, we're going to talk about fumigation emergencies, where your PPE that you use now and are completely comfortable walking into a room like this with more toxins burning than that you're going to find in the other example I showed you that was the self-made chemistry project. You could still save somebody's life and protect yourself. That's my talk on the gray area. I don't know how long I went, but I'd like to thank the FIRExTalk, all of them, because not just the name of individuals, and the Firefighter Cancer Support Network, which if you don't know about it, learn something about it, because there isn't a greater group of individuals. When you talk about, say, the grassroots, if anybody you know has ever gotten cancer, or you have, it's a bad day, right? And they are there to pick you up and help you carry through this process. And so I'm always going to mention them. And thank you all for being here.